Life is a gift, but it is also a vapor. One day it appears, the next day it is gone. No matter how long a man lives, his years are but a moment when compared to eternity. This understanding must shape how you live, how you think, and how you invest your time. From the moment you wake up each day, a portion of your life has been spent and will never return. Time is a currency you cannot store. And gentlemen, it is spent the moment it is given. The question is, on what are you spending it? The enemy's strategy is not always to destroy you instantly. And gentlemen, sometimes it is to distract you until you waste your days. You will never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. And you can no longer retrieve it. And gentlemen, that is why you must decide to live intentionally. To live every single day with the consciousness that you are a steward, not an owner of your life. Every breath you take is proof that God has extended mercy and given you another opportunity to align with his purpose. The greatest tragedy is not dying young. It is living long and wasting the life you were given. Your gifts, your resources, and gentlemen, your influence, all of them are tools for God's agenda, but they will only count for eternity if they are used in the light of his will. Gentlemen, life is too short to live offended, too short to live in bitterness, too short to chase shadows while ignoring the substance of your assignment. And gentlemen, life is often mistaken as something we can hold on to, something we can stretch and extend according to our own desires. Yet the truth is that it slips away faster than we realize. The scriptures liken it to a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Gentlemen, a mist rising in the morning only to disappear with the warmth of the sun. Whether a person lives for 20 years or 100 years, when placed side by side with the endless span of eternity, it is but a brief moment. This understanding should not fill the heart with fear, but with urgency. Each day is a priceless gift from God, not to be squandered on trivialities or spent entirely on things that have no lasting value. When you wake up in the morning, the breath in your lungs is not an accident. It is a deliberate allowance from heaven. Gentlemen, a fresh page on which you are called to write the story of obedience, service, and love. Many people live as though they will always have tomorrow, pushing important matters to another day, telling themselves there will be time to pray more, to forgive, to mend relationships, to obey God fully. But tomorrow is a promise no one can guarantee. If life is truly a vapor, gentlemen, then every breath you take is an opportunity to prepare for the moment when you will stand before your Creator and give account. That is why each day must be lived with intention. It is easy to get caught up in the routine. And gentlemen, to wake up and go through the motions without considering the eternal weight of your choices. Gentlemen, yet each choice builds a testimony, either for God's glory or for self. The more you realize the brevity of life, the more you will treasure each sunrise, each conversation, each chance to be a light in a dark world. Gentlemen, there are those who wait until tragedy strikes before they begin to value life. An accident, a sudden illness, gentlemen, or the loss of a loved one jolts them into the realization that time is fragile. Gentlemen, but wisdom is to live with that awareness before life forces it upon you. If you knew that today was your last day, how would you speak to people? How would you treat strangers? How much time would you give to prayer and reflection? And gentlemen, how many grudges would you drop instantly? Because you know the clock is ticking. You can choose to live this way, not in fear of death, but in gratitude for life. Gratitude changes the way you see even ordinary moments. The smile of a friend, the beauty of nature. Gentlemen, the chance to serve someone in need, all become precious when you see them as gifts that will not always be available. Understanding that life is a vapor should not lead to carelessness, but to careful stewardship. When something is rare and fragile, you handle it with extra care. Time is exactly like that. Each morning is an unearned gift. Each evening is a reminder that a portion of your time on earth has been spent. What you do with it will echo in eternity. Some people hoard their time for themselves, spending it entirely on entertainment, ambition, and personal gain. Others sow it into what matters: relationship, service, worship, and the fulfillment of divine purpose. At the end, and gentlemen, only one of these will have eternal worth. The achievements and possessions that seem so important now will fade like the morning mist. Gentlemen, but what is done for God will endure. There is also the subtle danger of thinking that a longer life means more opportunity to fulfill purpose. Gentlemen, history is full of examples of men and women who lived short lives yet made lasting impact because they understood urgency. And gentlemen, they did not measure their days by length but by depth. In the same way, you are called not just to count your days, but to make your days count. Whether you have many years ahead or only a few, the question is not how long you live, but how well you live. And gentlemen, every sunrise is another chance to align your actions with the will of God, to pour yourself into what will still matter 1,000 years from now. When you see life as a vapor, you will also be less attached to offenses and grudges. You will realize it is foolish to waste precious days in bitterness or unforgiveness. Gentlemen, holding on to anger is like spending your limited time poisoning your own soul. Instead, you can choose to forgive, to release, to walk in peace, knowing that your time here is too short to be consumed by negativity. You will speak words that build, not destroy. And gentlemen, you will leave people better than you found them. You will invest your influence in lifting others closer to God. Gentlemen, life being a vapor also reminds us of the urgency of reaching others with the truth. People around you are also on borrowed time. And gentlemen, every encounter could be the last opportunity to plant a seed of hope, to share the message of God's love. Gentlemen, to encourage someone who's on the edge of giving up. The brevity of life should ignite compassion, making you sensitive to the needs of others. Gentlemen, ready to act rather than delay. You may never get another chance to make that call, send that message, or extend that kindness. In the end, gentlemen, this understanding is not meant to make you live in constant anxiety, but to awaken you to the reality that life is a divine assignment with a limited window. You are a steward of the days you have, and each one must be treated as the rare treasure it is. There will be a day when your voice will be silent, your hands still, your breath gone. Until then, live with purpose, gratitude, and urgency. Knowing that each day is a divine opportunity to honor God with all you are and all you have. Time is one of the most precious resources given to man, yet it is also one of the most misunderstood. It moves in one direction, only forward, and once a moment passes, it is gone forever. No matter how much you wish to go back, no matter how deeply you regret a choice, time does not reverse. You cannot relive yesterday. Gentlemen, you cannot reclaim last year, and you cannot recover a single second once it is spent. This reality is sobering because it means every passing moment is being withdrawn from the limited account of your life. You are not merely existing through hours and days. And gentlemen, you are constantly spending from a finite supply that is running out with each heartbeat. The tragedy is that many live as though time is abundant and elastic, assuming there will always be more. This illusion leads to procrastination, wasted opportunities, and a casual approach to the things that matter most. But time has no sympathy, and gentlemen, it will not pause for your convenience or wait for you to get ready. Whether you are prepared or not, the clock moves forward and you are carried along with it. The wisest thing a person can do is to invest their time in what carries eternal value. Because while time is irreversible, its results can be eternal. The way you use your hours today can echo into eternity, shaping destinies, transforming lives, and fulfilling divine purposes. Every human being receives the same amount of time each day, 24 hours. But the difference between a life of impact and a life of regret lies in how those hours are used. Gentlemen, time can be spent on things that perish, or it can be sown into what endures beyond this life. And gentlemen, the choices you make today are like seeds planted into the soil of eternity, and the harvest will be seen on the other side of time. This is why aligning your priorities with God's will is not optional. It is the only way to ensure that your limited days produce results that will not fade away. When you understand that time is irreversible, gentlemen, you begin to treat it with reverence. You stop wasting hours on endless distractions, empty conversations, and gentlemen, and pursuits that add nothing to your eternal account. This does not mean that rest and recreation have no place, but it does mean they must be balanced with a focus on what truly matters. Every relationship, every assignment, every opportunity should be evaluated through the lens of eternity. Will this matter 100 years from now? Will it matter when I stand before God? And gentlemen, if the answer is no, then it should not be allowed to consume the best of your time and energy. Gentlemen, there is also a hidden danger in believing that you can delay important things until a more convenient season. Many have postponed obedience, forgiveness, prayer, and service because they assumed there would be time later. But life is unpredictable and time is not yours to control. Postponement often leads to permanent loss because some opportunities once missed will never return. And gentlemen, the door that is open today may be closed tomorrow. The person you plan to reconcile with may no longer be here. Gentlemen, the call you intended to make may never be possible again. That is why wisdom demands that you act while you can, doing what is right without delay. And time being irreversible should also produce a sense of urgency in fulfilling your purpose. You were sent into the world with an assignment, gentlemen, and the days you have are the only window to complete it. The enemy knows he cannot stop time, so he works to waste yours. He fills your life with distractions, keeps you entangled in offenses, gentlemen, and tempts you to spend your energy on things that appear urgent but are not important. Gentlemen, the danger is that by the time you realize you have been chasing shadows, the years have already passed. Gentlemen, this is why it is vital to constantly seek God's direction, to know what should take priority in each season, gentlemen, and to have the discipline to pursue it wholeheartedly. When you see time as a divine trust, you will also value the time of others. And gentlemen, you will not waste it with meaningless interactions or drag them into pursuits that have no eternal significance. You will speak words that build, teach, gentlemen, encourage and inspire, because you know that each encounter is an opportunity that may never be repeated. Gentlemen, this perspective will make you intentional in relationships, careful in commitments, and faithful in every responsibility given to you. Gentlemen, the irreversible nature of time also means you must deal with regret wisely. Everyone has moments they wish they could redo, choices they wish they could reverse. But dwelling endlessly on the past only wastes the present. While you cannot go back, and gentlemen, you can decide how to use the moments you still have. You can turn your remaining time into a legacy of obedience, love, and impact. God in His mercy can redeem lost years in terms of results, but He does not rewind the clock. Gentlemen, the only way to honor His mercy is to start making the most of every day from this moment onward. In the end, and gentlemen, the brevity and irreversibility of time should humble you and make you intentional. Each morning, you are handed a gift that cannot be returned once it is opened. Each night, a portion of that gift is gone forever. Gentlemen, you have no power over how much time you are given, but you have complete control over how you use it. Gentlemen, to invest your time in what carries eternal value is to ensure that when your days are over, your works will still speak, your impact will still remain, and your obedience will still shine in the record of heaven. And gentlemen, this is the highest and wisest use of the most precious resource you will ever have. Distraction is one of the most subtle and effective tools the enemy uses to rob people of their destiny. It does not always come in the form of obvious sin or blatant rebellion against God. Often it is clothed in what appears harmless, sometimes even good, yet it subtly shifts your focus away from what truly matters. The danger is that while destruction is often loud and visible, distraction is quiet, entanglement creeping into your life without resistance until you realize years have passed and you have achieved very little of eternal value. The enemy may not be able to stop you directly, so he will aim to keep you busy with activities, relationships, and pursuits that consume your energy but add nothing to your divine assignment. And gentlemen, the nature of distraction is that it often disguises itself as something urgent. It appeals to your sense of responsibility and draws you into endless cycles of doing and convinces you that business is the same as fruitfulness. Gentlemen, but there is a vast difference between motion and progress. You can spend your days running from one task to another, feeling exhausted yet having advanced nowhere in the things that matter most. The enemy celebrates not only when people fall into obvious sin, but also when they waste their strength chasing shadows, gentlemen, because the end result is the same old life that misses its God-given purpose. One of the greatest tragedies is not that people fail, but that they succeed in the wrong things. You can build a career, accumulate wealth, gain influence, gentlemen, and still stand before God one day with nothing to show for the time you were given. Distraction ensures that your focus is scattered, Gentlemen, your priorities are misaligned and your energy is drained on temporary things while eternal matters are neglected. Gentlemen, it is like pouring water into a leaking vessel. No matter how much you pour, nothing lasting is retained. Distraction often works through small compromises. It may start with spending a little less time in prayer. Gentlemen, postponing a commitment to study God's word or neglecting the relationships that sharpen your faith. Instead, and gentlemen, your time becomes filled with social media scrolling, endless entertainment, unnecessary arguments, and the constant pursuit of approval from people. Gentlemen, these things may seem harmless in the moment, but over time they pull your heart away from the things of God. Gentlemen, the enemy does not need to remove your faith entirely if he can simply make it ineffective by keeping you occupied elsewhere. Another dangerous aspect of distraction is that it numbs you to the passing of time. Because you are constantly occupied, you fail to notice how quickly the days turn into weeks, the weeks into months, and the months into years. Before long, gentlemen, the opportunities you once had are gone, the seasons you could have maximized are closed, and you are left with regret. This is why discernment is essential. You must constantly evaluate where your time, energy, and attention are going. And gentlemen, asking yourself whether they are moving you closer to or further from the purpose God has set before you. Enemy strategy is not only to distract individuals but also entire generations. In an age of constant notifications, endless entertainment, and information overload, people have become accustomed to living without stillness, without focus, and without depth. Gentlemen, the heart that is always distracted cannot hear God clearly, cannot think deeply, and cannot sustain meaningful relationships. Distraction scatters your attention so that you cannot give your best to any single thing, and as a result, nothing truly great is accomplished. Gentle, overcoming distraction requires intentionality. You must decide that your life will be defined by purpose, and gentlemen, not by whatever demands your attention in the moment. This means setting clear priorities based on God's will for your life and guarding them fiercely. It means learning to say no to certain opportunities, conversations, and activities, even if they are good, gentlemen, because they are not right for your assignment in this season. It means creating boundaries for how you use your time, your devices, gentlemen, and your relationships so that nothing pulls you away from what matters most. Focus is one of the most powerful weapons against distraction. When your eyes are fixed on your goal, you become less susceptible to the pull of lesser things. This is why vision is so important. If you do not know where you are going, anything will look like the right path, and you will waste precious time wandering, gentlemen. But when your purpose is clear, you can measure every invitation, every task, and every demand against whether it serves or sabotages your mission. Distraction also loses its power when you learn to value the presence of God above everything else. In His presence, priorities are realigned, burdens are lifted, and clarity is restored. Gentlemen, time spent with Him sharpens your discernment so that you can recognize the subtle traps of the enemy before they consume your attention. It also strengthens your resolve to stay committed to the path He has set before you, even when other options seem more exciting or rewarding in the short term. If the enemy cannot make you unfaithful, he will try to make you unfocused. If he cannot destroy you, he will try to delay you. And if he cannot delay you, he will try to dilute your effectiveness by dividing your attention. Gentlemen, the cause of distraction is not just missed opportunities. It is the loss of the life you could have lived, the impact you could have made, gentlemen, and the obedience you could have offered to God. Every day you spend distracted is a day you can never recover, a seed you can never replant, a moment you can never relive. And gentlemen, that is why you must fight for your focus as though your destiny depends on it. Because it does. The true tragedy of life is not measured by how short it is, but by how empty it is of purpose. Many fear the idea of dying young, gentlemen. Yet there is something far more dreadful: spending decades on earth without ever discovering or fulfilling the reason you were created. Gentlemen, life is not just about existing, accumulating possessions, or enjoying comfort. And gentlemen, it is about carrying out a divine assignment entrusted to you by the one who gave you breath. Gentlemen, to live long without fulfilling that assignment is to waste the very reason you were given time in the first place. And gentlemen, longevity without purpose is like a journey without direction. You may keep moving, but you are not getting any closer to the destination that matters. That each day is a gift and an opportunity to make deposits in the account of eternity. But when days are consumed with trivial pursuits, gentlemen, the gift becomes squandered. It is possible to be busy from morning till night to achieve many personal milestones, and gentlemen, and yet arrive at the end of your life only to realize that you spent it on what has no eternal value. Such a realization is far more painful than death itself, gentlemen, because it is the awareness that you were entrusted with something precious and you let it slip away. Gentlemen, a wasted life is not always the result of laziness or lack of ambition. Sometimes it is the product of misplaced priorities. And gentlemen, people pour their energy into building careers, amassing wealth, gaining influence, or chasing recognition, none of which are wrong in themselves, but all of which become empty if disconnected from the purpose of God. The question is not whether you are doing something, but whether you are doing the right thing, the thing you were born to do. Without this alignment, success is hollow, achievements are fleeting, and life becomes a cycle of activity without true meaning. Gentlemen, one of the enemy's most effective strategies is to keep people preoccupied with the urgent at the expense of the important. The urgent demands your immediate attention, but the important determines your destiny. You may spend years putting out fires, meeting deadlines, and gentlemen, and responding to demands, only to realize that you never invested in what will matter when your life is over. That this is why purpose must be discovered early and pursued relentlessly. Time wasted cannot be reclaimed, and opportunities missed may never return. The older a person becomes without fulfilling their purpose, the heavier the weight of regret. Gentlemen, because they know the years behind them are far greater than the years ahead. Gentlemen, the tragedy of a wasted life is also that it affects more than just the person who wastes it. Every purpose is connected to people. Men, your assignment is not just about you. It is about those whose lives you are meant to impact. When you fail to fulfill your purpose, and gentlemen, you rob others of the blessings, encouragement, guidance, and transformation that God intended to bring to them through you. Entire destinies can be delayed or derailed because one person chose comfort over calling, distraction over dedication, or fear over faith. Gentlemen, purpose is not a personal luxury. It is a sacred responsibility. There are many who only come to terms with this truth on their deathbed. Gentlemen, as their time runs out, they begin to reflect on what they did with their life. For some, there is peace because they know they ran their race well. Gentlemen, for others, there is a deep ache because they realize they chased what did not matter and neglected what did. And gentlemen, the worst kind of emptiness is not having nothing. It is having everything but the thing you were born for. That is why you must live each day with the end in mind, measuring your decisions, priorities, and pursuits against the question, gentlemen, will this matter when my life is over? Fulfilling purpose does not mean doing something the world considers grand, gentlemen. It means doing what God has called you to do with faithfulness and excellence. It could be raising a godly family, serving in a hidden place, gentlemen, leading a small group of people toward truth, or influencing nations. What matters is obedience, not size. The measure of a life well lived is not in its length or visibility, but in its alignment with God's design. Even a short life, if lived in purpose, gentlemen, can leave an impact that ripples for generations, while a long life outside of purpose can pass unnoticed and unremembered. Gentle living with purpose requires intentionality. Gentlemen, it demands that you seek God to know why you are here, and then arrange your life in a way that prioritizes that calling above everything else. It means saying no to distractions, enduring seasons of preparation, and making sacrifices that others may not understand. And gentlemen, it means refusing to be swayed by the applause of men or the temptation of comfort when these things pull you away from your mission. Gentlemen, it means being willing to finish your assignment even if it costs you everything, because the reward is not in this life alone, but in eternity. And gentlemen, every day you wake up is another opportunity to move closer to the fulfillment of your purpose. Gentlemen, you may not be able to change the years you have already spent, but you can choose to make the rest of your life count. And gentlemen, you can decide that you will not leave this earth with unfinished work, that you will pour out every gift, every talent, every moment in service of the one who sent you. When your time is done, let it be said that you did not just live long, but that you lived well. that you completed the assignment given to you, gentlemen, and that your life counted for something beyond yourself long after a person has departed from this world. Their possessions, titles, and accolades quickly lose relevance in the minds of people, but the impact they had on lives continues to echo through generations. Material wealth, no matter how vast, is bound to perish, be forgotten, or be transferred to others who may not value it as the original owner did. Titles that once commanded respect eventually fade in significance as new names rise to take their place. Gentlemen, history shows that even the greatest of earthly positions are replaced, the most luxurious possessions eventually deteriorate, and the most celebrated achievements in the eyes of men are eventually overshadowed by the passage of time. Yet, and gentlemen, there is something that never loses its value in eternity: the investment made in the lives of others for the sake of God's kingdom. A house may crumble, cars will lose their shine, and trophies will gather dust, but a soul transformed by love, truth, gentlemen, and faith will remain a testament long after the giver is gone. The legacy of impact is not measured by the abundance of things a person possesses, but by the depth of influence they leave behind. True riches are the seeds sown into the hearts of people, seeds that produce fruit that carries eternal value. It is not how much you owned that will be celebrated in heaven, but how much of yourself you gave to touch, uplift, and direct others toward God. And gentlemen, many pursue wealth with the belief that it is the ultimate evidence of a successful life. But when life's final chapter is written, no amount of money will be able to speak for you in the courts of eternity. Only the testimonies of those whose paths you changed and whose destinies you influenced for good will remain as a witness before God. Every act of kindness, every sacrifice for righteousness, and gentlemen, and every moment you chose to serve others rather than self becomes a jewel in your eternal reward. That is why people who live with an eternal perspective prioritize relationships and the souls of men above the accumulation of possessions. In the end, and gentlemen, no one remembers the brand of clothes you wore or the size of your bank account, but they will remember how you made them feel. And gentlemen, the hope you gave them when they were hopeless, and the truth you shared when they were lost. Gentlemen, people will remember the times you stopped to listen when no one else cared, the moments you prayed for them in secret, and the days you gave without expecting anything in return. These are the silent yet powerful threads that weave an unbreakable legacy. Such investments often go unnoticed on earth, but they are recorded in heaven with precision. God himself takes note of those who pour their lives into the service of others for his name's sake. The Bible assures us that God is not unjust to forget the labor of love we show toward his people, and this means every small act of impact has eternal recognition. While wealth and titles remain confined to the earth, impact reaches into eternity and becomes part of your eternal testimony. To live for impact requires intentionality. And gentlemen, it demands a heart that values people more than possessions, one that understands that souls are the most precious commodity in the universe. Every encounter is an opportunity to plant a seed of love, to share a word of truth, or to extend a helping hand. Gentlemen, many miss these moments because they are too focused on climbing the ladder of personal ambition, forgetting that in eternity, the ladder disappears, but the people you helped along the way remain as your true achievement. When you touch a life, you create a ripple effect that extends far beyond your reach. That one act of kindness may inspire another person to bless someone else. And in this way, your influence multiplies through countless lives. Even when your name is no longer spoken on earth, gentlemen, the fruits of your impact continue to work in others' possessions can only follow you as far as the grave. But impact follows you into eternity. A person who dies with wealth but without impact leaves nothing of eternal worth behind. And gentlemen, but someone who may have owned little yet gave generously of their time, love, gentlemen, and faith will find themselves welcomed into eternity with joy by those whose lives they touched. This truth should challenge the way we measure success. Instead of asking, what have I gained? We should ask, who have I influenced for God? The greatest inheritance you can leave behind is not property or financial security, but a heritage of faith, integrity, and love for God that inspires others to live for him. The world's definition of legacy may revolve around buildings named after you or businesses you founded, gentlemen. But God's definition is measured by the eternal value of the lives you shaped. Living for impact means living with the understanding that you are a steward, gentle, not an owner. Everything you have, time, resources, skills, is given to you as a trust from God to serve His purposes on earth. When you shift from ownership to stewardship, your priorities change. You begin to see opportunities to help, to mentor, to encourage, and to bring the light of Christ into dark places. This lifestyle is not about recognition or applause. It is about faithfulness to the mission God has entrusted to you. While people may forget your name, and gentlemen, they will never forget the change you brought into their lives. And in the end, that is the testimony that matters most when the end comes. And gentlemen, and you stand before your Maker, He will not ask how many cars you drove, how many houses you owned, or what position you held. Gentlemen, He will ask what you did with the time, the gifts, and the influence He gave you. Those who live for possessions will find their hands empty, gentlemen. But those who live for impact will hear the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Therefore, choose daily to make your life count, and gentlemen, not by the measure of what you own, but by the measure of the lives you touch for the glory of God. We live with the illusion that we have time, yet the reality is that the only moment truly in our hands is now. Yesterday is a memory. Tomorrow is a promise that may never come. And but today is the divine opportunity placed before you. Each sunrise is a reminder that God has extended mercy for one more day, not for idle living, but to fulfill His purpose and advance His kingdom. The tragedy is that many people keep postponing what they know they should do. They say, "I'll start tomorrow, I'll forgive later, I'll pray more when life is less busy." But tomorrow often becomes a cycle of delay that leads to years of stagnation. Gentlemen, procrastination is a silent killer of destinies, not because people lack ability, but because they fail to move when the window of opportunity is open. Obedience is time sensitive. The instruction you ignore today may not have the same impact if you decide to obey years later. When God tells you to move, gentlemen, it is because He has already aligned circumstances for that moment, and hesitation can mean missing what He has prepared. Today is a currency that must be spent wisely. It is given to you in 24-hour installments, and how you use it determines the trajectory of your life. Every day carries opportunities to bless, to learn, to grow, to serve, and to sow seeds that will bear fruit in the future. But opportunities have an expiry date. The door that is open now may not be open tomorrow. Many doors are seasonal, and when you miss them, you must wait for another cycle that may take years or may never return. That is why the scripture urges us to redeem the time, for the days are evil. It is not enough to be alive. You must be intentional with your moments. The enemy understands the power of today, and gentlemen, so he distracts you with the weight of the past and the worries of the future. And gentlemen, he fills your mind with regret over what you cannot change, or anxiety over what has not yet happened, so that you neglect what you can do right now. The secret to a life of impact is not found in grand plans for the future, but in daily faithfulness. A small act of obedience today, calling someone to encourage them, spending quality time in prayer, giving generously to someone in need, can have ripples you may never fully see on this side of eternity. It is easy to assume you will have more time later to get serious about God, to mend broken relationships, or to start the work He has put in your heart. A gentleman, but cemeteries are full of people who had plans for next year. This is not to live in fear of death, but to live in wisdom about life's brevity. Gentlemen, the wise live with urgency, not anxiety. They understand that delay is a form of disobedience when God has already spoken. Delayed obedience is often disobedience in disguise. Consider how many opportunities have been lost simply because someone said, and gentlemen, I'm not ready yet. People miss divine connections because they wait to feel prepared. They miss seasons of harvest because they did not plant when God said to sow. They miss assignments because they thought there would be a better time. But time waits for no one. And gentlemen, and destiny is not negotiated on your preferred schedule. The beauty of living for God today is that keeps your heart sensitive and your spirit ready. You do not waste hours in meaningless pursuits. Instead, you align your steps with eternal purpose. Every conversation can be intentional, and every action can be worship, and every day can become an offering poured out before the Lord. When you live this way, and gentlemen, you no longer measure your life by the length of your days, but by the weight of your impact. If you woke up this morning, gentlemen, it is because there is still something on earth that God needs you to do. Your life is still a solution to someone's problem, a light to someone's darkness, a voice of hope to someone's despair. But that role is only fulfilled if you rise and act today. And gentlemen, tomorrow is uncertain, so you must treat today as the stage on which the drama of your destiny is being played. Refuse to waste it. Refuse to spend it complaining, worrying, or comparing yourself to others. Invest it in prayer, in love, in learning, in service, and in steps toward your God-given vision. When you stand before God one day, you will not be judged for the dreams you had for someday. You will be judged for the faithfulness you showed in the days you were given. And gentlemen, the measure of a life well lived is not found in how much you plan for the future, but in how much you obeyed in the present. Gentlemen, this is why the wisest prayer you can make each morning is, Lord, help me to live fully for you today. Show me what matters now, and gentlemen, and give me the courage to do it. Because the only time you truly have is the one you are in right now. And what you do with it will echo into eternal life, takes on its truest meaning when it is viewed through the lens of eternity. Because the reality is that all the pursuits, achievements, and possessions in this world are temporary and will one day fade away, gentlemen. But the choices we make in alignment with God's will echo into forever. And when you live with eternal perspective, it shapes your values, gentlemen, your priorities, and even the way you endure challenges, because you are no longer living just to survive or to be applauded by men, gentlemen, but to stand before the one who will weigh every action, intention, and word, gentlemen. And when you remember that a day is coming when all hidden things will be revealed, it changes how you use your time, how you treat people, and how you respond to God's voice. And you realize that the applause of people, while pleasant, is fleeting, but the approval of God lasts forever. And so you live each day as a steward, knowing that life on earth is not ownership, but a trust given to you by the Creator, and that every resource, relationship, and opportunity is a seed to be planted for His glory. And gentlemen, and living with eternal perspective is not about living in fear, but about living with deep conviction that life is more than eating, drinking, and making a name for yourself. It is about advancing a kingdom whose rewards cannot be corrupted by moth or rust. And when this truth governs you, it changes how you measure success, because success is no longer defined by comfort, fame, or accumulation, but by obedience to the assignment given to you by God. And it also changes how you endure seasons of waiting, trials, and losses. And gentlemen, because you understand that momentary pain is light compared to the weight of eternal glory that is being produced in you. And gentlemen, and this awareness strengthens you to forgive quickly, love deeply, and serve selflessly. Gentlemen, for you know that heaven's records are keeping track of what the world may ignore. And when your decisions are filtered through eternity, you will find yourself asking not, is this convenient? But does this please God? Gentlemen, not, will people like this? But will this matter when I stand before the judgment seat of Christ? And this perspective will also keep you from being seduced by temporary pleasures or derailed by distractions. And gentlemen, because you recognize that time is short and the harvest is plentiful. And gentlemen, and those who walk with eternal perspective do not waste their lives in comparison, competition, or petty offenses. And gentlemen, because their eyes are fixed on the eternal reward, and even in the face of misunderstanding or rejection, they keep building, giving, praying, and serving, because they are living for the well done, good and faithful servant that comes from God alone. And when you live with this mindset, you also become a source of light and clarity to those around you. Gentlemen, inspiring them to lift their eyes beyond the troubles of today and to live for something greater. And the truth is, when eternity is real to you, obedience becomes urgent, worship becomes pure, and sacrifice becomes a privilege. Gentlemen, because you know that the one who called you is faithful and that His reward is sure. Gentlemen, and though the world may call you foolish for refusing to chase what they chase, you will be wise in the eyes of God. Gentlemen, and when your life ends and it will. You will discover that living with eternal perspective was the greatest investment you could have ever made, because you will enter into joy, into peace, and into a reward that no one can take away. And until that day comes, you keep pressing on, not looking back, not slowing down, not giving up, but living with the unshakable awareness that you are a pilgrim here, and your true home is in the presence of the King whose glory will never fade. You represent the kingdom is to live with the constant awareness that you are not just an ordinary citizen of earth, but a divinely appointed ambassador carrying the authority, culture and message of heaven to a world in desperate need of truth, love, and transformation. And gentlemen, and just as an earthly ambassador does not speak or act according to personal preference, but according to the will and instruction of the government, he represents gentlemen. So also a believer is called to reflect the character, priorities, and purposes of God in every sphere of life. And this means that your words, actions, and decisions must consistently align with the values of the kingdom. Gentlemen, not merely in moments of public attention, but also in private where integrity is proven. Because the credibility of an ambassador is not in loud declarations, but in the quiet, consistent reflection of their king's nature. And to be an ambassador is to understand that you are here on assignment. Gentlemen, that your life is not a random existence, but a strategic placement in a specific time, place, and gentlemen, an environment, so that through you others may encounter God. And representing the kingdom requires that you carry the culture of heaven, which is marked by righteousness, peace, joy, mercy, humility, and power, and that you resist the pull of a world that thrives on self-promotion, gentlemen, compromise and rebellion, because you know you are here to model a higher way of living, one that points people to the King. And gentlemen, and an ambassador does not dilute the message of their homeland to gain the acceptance of the host nation. In the same way, you must not water down the truth of God's word for fear of rejection or criticism. For your loyalty is first to heaven, gentlemen. And this loyalty will often require courage, because representing the kingdom means you will sometimes stand alone, refuse to participate in what is common, or speak against what is popular. But when you remember that you have heaven's backing, gentlemen, you can remain steadfast and to represent the kingdom well. You must stay connected to the King through prayer, worship, and obedience. And gentlemen, for an ambassador cannot operate independently and expect to represent their homeland accurately. And when you are in tune with God, gentlemen, His wisdom flows through you in conversations. His compassion is seen in the way you treat people, gentlemen. And His power is displayed through your faith and works. And being an ambassador also means you carry a ministry of reconciliation, building bridges between God and those who are far from Him, showing them that the door of mercy is still open and that salvation is available, gentlemen. And this representation is not just in preaching, but in the way you conduct business with honesty, treat the poor with dignity, lead with humility, gentlemen, and forgive quickly. Because the kingdom is best revealed when people see its fruit in everyday life. And to represent the kingdom well, you must also remember that you are under constant observation. For just as the actions of an ambassador reflect on their entire nation, gentlemen, so your conduct reflects on the King you serve. And this should inspire you to walk in holiness, excellence, and love. And gentlemen, not out of fear, but out of reverence for the one you represent. And when challenges come, you do not respond as the world does, gentlemen, because you are not here to mirror the chaos of the earth, but the stability of heaven, showing that peace is possible even in storms and hope is alive even in darkness. And as an ambassador, gentlemen, you are entrusted with the authority of the kingdom, which means you have the right to declare God's word, to pray His will into situations, gentlemen, to speak life into the broken, and to resist the works of the enemy with the backing of heaven. And this authority is not for personal gain or pride, but for the advancement of God's purposes. And when you live daily with this identity, gentle, you become a channel of God's presence, a living invitation for others to taste and see that the Lord is good, gentlemen. And the impact of such a life goes beyond your lifetime, because when you represent the kingdom faithfully, you plant seeds that may bear fruit for generations, influencing people you may never meet and leaving a legacy that will be celebrated in eternity, gentlemen. And so you walk with the awareness that you are not just living for today, but for the honor of the King whose name you carry. And as long as you have breath, you remain committed to making his will known, his love visible, and his power undeniable in your generation.